I'm a Stitch. Good day. My name is William Snow. I'm the acting uh, director of consultation for Stoney Tribal Administration. Stoney Tribal Administration is the is comprised of the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley First Nations, uh, and we are situated at the reserves in the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains at Bighorn Indian Reserve, Rabbit Lake Indian Reserve, Stony Indian Reserve, and the Eden Valley Indian Reserve, all within Treaty 7, except for Bighorn, which is in Treaty 6. Um, Nicole, can you see my screen there? Is that working?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Um, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the CMN for providing some time and space here for our update today. Um, how long do I have? About 10, 15 minutes?
You have 15 minutes.
Great. Uh, I just wanted to provide an overview of our project to date, um, and some of the work that we've been doing or trying to do during these COVID limitations. Uh, this is the picture of the bison paddock out at Morley at Stony Indian Park. And this is a photo from 2018 as part of our herd. And in the background there is the Kananaskis Valley leading south. This was part of a film production that we did with the CBC in 2018 for a film called Howling Peak. We were able to talk a little bit about not only place names in the Canmore area, but also place names in Banff. And we're hoping to capture some of that in our written form of the cultural study that we are uh, compiling. Also, I would note attending the session today is Don Crothers Den Hoed with UBC, formerly with Mount Royal University. Don has been helping and assisting me in our group and bringing together, helping out with the administrative side and the recording and working on the final report that we are compiling. So just as a reminder, the Bison Reintroduction Zone is within Banff National Park, and those green and blue and yellow zones there, those are the zones that are set aside for the reintroduction area, basically called the Panther Dormer area. When the project started in 2017, it was to reintroduce plains bison into this mountain landscape. This is a pilot project by Parks Canada, and that 5 year pilot time frame is coming up for review in March of 2022. Banff, as many of you are probably aware, that Banff is in the eastern slopes and is also within the Stoney traditional territory. Banff is, of course, Canada's first national park, and this species, the bison or buffalo species, is a very important, culturally important, environmentally important, spiritually important species to the Stoney Nakoda people. The reason why we wanted to do this study was that in the initial environmental assessment that was conducted for this project, there was not a lot of cultural significance tied to this particular species or this landscape. And so we had been searching for a way to find funding so that we could conduct our study to bring out or to illustrate many of the culturally importance, the cultural importance of bison and the cultural importance of this landscape, so that we have a more full understanding of the Bison Reintroduction project. Back, um, just as a reminder, back in 20, the first iteration of the CMN projects, the the Bison Reintroduction project was a traditional knowledge study, and at that time we had the three modes of projects: the science, the scientific studies, the traditional knowledge or local studies, and then mode two was a combination of those two areas. um, our This is a picture of our trail riders, um, Oli Benjamin, Toby Dixon, and Conrad Rabbit, alongside the participants from Parks Canada up at the Yaha Tinder Ranch before they headed out to the trail ride. We had a chance to gather, and we conducted a ceremony up at the Yaha Tinder Ranch before the riders went out. That was something that was requested by our elders and the riders themselves, in order so that things would proceed in a good way, that there wouldn't be any major incidents. And so we conducted the study up there. We had our consultation officers of the Stoney consultation team also took part, and it was a really good experience. I think it was something that these some of these riders have never been in that area, in the Panther Dormer area. They've been into Banff Park, they've been in along the eastern slopes and have ridden in different areas, but not. Some of them have never been into this Panther Dormers uh, area. All of these riders took part in the elder interview process that was held prior to this, and when we had made arrangements to conduct this study conduct the fieldwork last September, um, we weren't sure if it was all going to come together because of all the COVID limitations, but we were able to bring it all together. Everybody conducted their work safely. We practiced social distancing, and we had a lot of just careful with a lot of our interactions during that time in September 2020. Um, when they were out on the trail, the one of the things that the riders were doing was that when we had talked to them previously in the elder interview stage, they got to hear about some of the stories, the traditional stories of these landscapes. So those things they were taking into account as they were traveling out to the area known as Scott's Camp, where they were resided for about 3 days. They left on a Tuesday. They stayed within the park areas for the next 3 nights, and then on the fifth day they returned back to Yaha Tinder Ranch. So it was a really good way for our trail riders to go out and see this actual landscape in a really meaningful way, to understand and see where some of the trails are that lead through there. There are historic trails that lead into this area from the Morley Reserve and from this area in Yaha Tinda that that lead up to our other reserve, the Bighorn Reserve. So many of these trail routes where there are now warden cabins within Banff National Park, these are along some of the trail and campsite areas that the Stonies used prior to settlement. And that's why we did our elder interviews first, to understand those types of changes on the landscape. Uh, a lot of it was a deep and very culturally important experience for many of the riders. They expressed to us when we had a chance to touch base with them after they returned. Beautiful area up there. We got to see some of the places where the bison are moving in and around the park, going to places that we didn't think they would go to. Some of the bison are GPS tracked, so we can see uh, that progression over time of how the herd is moving. Not all of the bison are GPS collared. The initial group of 16 bison that began in 2017, that group has now grown to a herd of 50. So, and they are active and moving around and are enjoying the landscape up there. And part of what we were looking for are what we call cultural indicators. So many of our trail riders are people, they don't have a background in sciences, in the sciences. They're not biologists, they're not wildlife specialists, but they know about the behaviors and our cultural understanding of bison, as well as other animals and vegetation. So these are the things they're taking into account to understand why the bison are moving the way to the locations that they are, and trying to interpret what that cultural meaning is. There were a couple of experiences that the riders had when they were out there. We did have a session, what we call a elder reconnection meeting, and this was held in also in September of 2020. But we didn't have a chance to talk to everybody about all of their experiences because we had not yet compiled all of the photos and videos that had been taken during the trail ride. We've had time now to compile many of that, all of that data, and to bring it together so that we are hoping to conduct a second elders reconnection meeting here soon, most likely at the Stoney Indian Reserve. Some of our restrictions had been eased up back in September. Our cases weren't that steep, but we did experience larger COVID caseloads into November and December, and we actually had a local state of emergency be issued by our band leadership this past January 12th. So we haven't been able to really sit down and talk with elders or the riders in a really in the way that we would like. But we are looking forward to doing some more of that work here this coming summer. The elders reconnection meeting was to relay experiences that our riders had gathered from the field work, relay all those experiences to our elders, and then they would offer us an interpretation of what that means. This particular photo was taken of where we usually conduct these meetings is at our bison paddock at Morley, and that way we're all sort of reminded of the cultural and historic importance that bison have played in our lives and the lives of our ancestors. Those cultural indicators are vary. So they could be vegetative, they could be wildlife related, they could be place specific. So those are some of the things that we're still working through to offer in terms of our report. One of the things that came up during the course of the study, during the course of the fieldwork, we had a chance to visit the one of the cabins at Yaha Tinda. And inside one of the cabins is this particular picture of Jonas Benjamin. Jonas Benjamin was a Stoney guide who helped the family, the Brewster family, when they first set up the Yaha Tinda Ranch. And his great grandson was one of our riders, Ole Benjamin. So he has a long historic connection to that place and the ranch. And those are some of the stories that he has within his own family. We are hoping to track this picture down to the Glenbow archives, but many of the research research and museum centers have been closed due to COVID, so we haven't had a chance to gather as many of these historic items as we would like. But we certainly are going to include this if we're able to track it down into the final report, so that we can not only show that cultural connection within the guise of our report, but also these historical pictures. Um, uh, see the CBC film that talks about a little bit about Tunnel Mountain and the place name, the Stony place name that we have for that I referred to. That's available online on the CBC website. A lot of our information is being built on the process that we had set out in the Stony Grizzly report. That report is available on the Canadian Mountain Network website. That is a report that we conducted for Environment Canada as part of their Aboriginal species funding for species at risk program. Much of this information will also be drawn from one of the books on Stony history. These mountains are sacred places. And as I said, we're still going through a lot of video and photos of the trail riders, but we hope to compile many of those into our final report when we get to that stage. And of course, looking at archives like the Glenbow and other museums for historical photos of that area, historical uh, places that may be of interest that in and around that time period when Stonies were active guides to those areas. So that's basically the report or my update, and I'm available if there's any questions.
Everyone, thank you, William. Great project and lovely photos. Nice to see you. Have you guys been involved with reintroduction of buffalo to the US?
Um, no, we haven't been involved in those projects, but I know that the Elk Island National Park is exporting bison not only within Canada but internationally to many different regions that are undertaking reintroduction programs in Europe, in Russia, and I believe there's also a project going on in Mongolia. So parks is the Plains bison herd at Elk Island National Park is really important. And though those were the the bison that were drawn from and used for the bison reintroduction in Banff. We are hoping that this will lead to more long-term monitoring, long-term impacts, positive impacts to landscapes, adding more biodiversity. And that's something that we certainly want to touch on it also in our report uh, when our when we come to the end of our study.